Okay, welcome to the class. First of all, how was the lab? Was it fine? Did you find something particularly difficult? Yeah.
I had some problem with the grid.
Okay.
So it was, I tried using like from column, and it was like the row start row end, column start row end, but it was a bit of a trial.
Okay. Yeah. In this case, it's always like that. You try, it never goes fine at the first try, so you have to try several times. But the exact error was with what happened? Hey, please there. Okay. What was the exact mistake?
Like in the post, figuring out how to position like the image and then the post text on the other side, so not under.
Ah, okay, I see. So with the display block and with the display line, okay. Perfect. Other than that, any other particular issue, something you struggle with? Okay, so what I propose you for this week, not just for today, is the following. Today, we will continue working on the exercise that we started working last time. Also, because by working on that exercise, it will be kind of a recap and kind of an example of how the lab could be faced. And then tomorrow we will start with Bootstrap, that will be useful for the next lab, and we will finally see what Bootstrap is, and we will improve what we will do today by integrating Bootstrap, okay? So today we'll get back to the exercise we started working last time. So let's take a look. Okay, so last time we had this, right? Do you remember that we started sketching, first imagining how the application would be, then trying to think which kind of services or functionalities that application would give us, and then trying to imagine how the graphical interface of that application would look. And we started to make some drawings, some first sketching to get like a design or a first approach of how we want our application to look. So we basically arrived to something like this. So we basically, try to visualize something like this graphical interface. Of course, this is a sketch, a drawing. I agree with almost everything, but there is a major issue with this design, and it is that in the main area of our website, we don't have anything, no? So this area is empty. So what do you think we can set in there as the main content? I don't have an answer, so what do you think we could add to that point?
The cards which are like posts by the teachers.
The cards, okay, like the offers, you mean? It could work. So you say something like,
But maybe taking the full width.
like the, okay, you mean something like this? Okay. And what would you put in there?
Like the person's name, and there they can write like, oh, I'm helping with this course.
Like the tutor name, you mean? Okay. Nice. So maybe a picture of the tutor could be fine. So let's imagine that maybe here we have like the picture of the tutor. Then here we have the name. What else? Maybe the course he's teaching or the tutoring he's teaching. And something else?
Maybe like something to invite people to join.
Yeah, learn more or like a button to
I don't know. Maybe even like a quote or something.
a quote.
Yeah.
Okay, nice.
I don't know.
Something. Okay. Like inviting, not technically, but something, some description or something that I could say, like to attract the people to my. Okay. Yeah, nice. So.
Also, if you're able to filter by the price and rating, shouldn't we also show this?
Okay, please go. And we have we already had the filter here. So we are thinking that maybe by applying the filter, then we can show more or less offers.
But if we are able to filter by something, then maybe we should show also on the cards the rating and the price.
Okay, sure. So for instance, the rating here, something like that. Okay, nice.
And the price?
And the?
Price.
The price. Yeah.
Like just $1 to $3 sign maybe.
Yeah, I was thinking also that one, so something like this. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
could use the filter more as a pop-up, like you can click and have filters instead of a fixed section of.
So these ones on the left, you would set them as a pop-up.
Yeah.
Not always visible, but
Yeah,
depending on.
exactly.
Okay, it's an option. It's an option. We
And
could
maybe
think.
have it maybe fixed only when you go on the page of all the courses, not on the home page.
Okay.
Maybe.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe we can then reflect on that. You were going to say something.
No, I was going to say the rating, but someone else.
Okay, to show that like the rating, so to get sure that if I apply the filter, then I have like a visual hint that tells me.
Maybe there is just 2 people with 4 stars.
Yeah.
So you apply the 4 star filter, you see those 2 people, and then maybe some 3 star,
Sure.
5 star.
Sure. And in that case, yeah, you give also the user a visual hint so that he understands that the filter has already been applied and the results there are the ones that he was looking for. Nice.
I have a question.
Yeah.
The advertising, how we decided? What is it again?
Like a random advertising, because I don't know who said it, but that it was important for us, hypothetically, to get money, no? Or so to get some kind of reward for the application.
Okay.
So we are thinking of advertising doing by someone else.
Okay, because I was thinking usually, I mean, this is a service, right? And
Yeah.
if a person just comes into the website for the first time, we should know what it exactly does. So I was thinking usually in websites there is the first section called the hero, and it's the one that.
Who are we? Or yeah.
Like what is the service, a brief description. Usually this is a full page first section.
Yeah, so maybe I agree that instead of the advertising here,
Maybe as an alternative, it could be like a promoted tutor who is like paying extra to be on the top.
maybe, yeah, we can also think of that like a business model in which they can pay to get like the sponsor tutor or something like that. But I agree with you. Maybe here, instead of the advertising in the first place, we can write some kind of description.
But this is the homepage when nobody is logged in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Something like this. And then at some point we can add advertising. Okay, of course, this won't be the final version, no? This is just to get an idea of what we want, how do we want to structure the website, which sections we can start to identify. But then, of course, we will see, for instance, what you proposed. Instead of fixing the filters there, maybe we can show them as a pop-up. Or instead of...
log in so that you can, like, you can have an own page where you show some teachers that if you want to see everything, you have to log in.
Sure. Or there are some interactions that we can't express in here because this is just like a static sketch. But for instance, what we can show with the buttons and that kind of stuff is something we will discover later. Yeah?
I think you need to add also reviews or comments of other customers.
Ah, yeah, maybe the reviews, but I was thinking that maybe the reviews could be, for instance, in here, something important is that I suppose that, for instance, this card should be clickable, no? And open like the profile of the tutor. And within that profile, of course, in the lower part, I would show like the comments or the reviews that he has had. Okay. But for up to now, this landing page, I think we all are satisfied with this version. Maybe the only thing that we are still missing is the footer, no? What do we usually put in the footer? Social networks, yeah, like the social network. So, well, for instance, like some icons here. And usually like the contact info.
Numbers,
Yeah, phone numbers.
like
So,
the place where the company is based.
phone, mail, something like this, okay? Nice, so do we like our first sketch of the landing page? Do we all agree? Nice, so the idea now, basically the same as what you had to do in the lab, is try to translate this into code. Translate this into what we have seen so far, which is HTML and CSS, okay? So how do we start? We start with the HTML or with the CSS? With the HTML, because it's the one that sets the structure of the website, okay? And with the HTML, what do you think could be like the first step? I mean, we all know how the HTML works, no? So the structure, and then we know that we have specific elements to give semantic to our structure, no? So my proposal is try to identify over this picture over here, this drawing, which semantic elements we can represent or translate into HTML. So do you still remember which were the semantic elements in HTML5? Of course, the first one, that would be this, the top one would be the header, yeah. Okay, which other element we can identify here? The nav, which is this one. Another simple one would be okay. And then these ones are kind of more tricky, no? Because we have to decide between section, between if they are a section, if they are an article, if they are just a div, if they are an aside. Do you remember we had also aside? Okay, so based in what we have seen, for instance, this section on the left, this one, what do you think could be? The most popular courses and the most popular tutors? Aside. Okay, why do you think it might be an aside?
Because it's sort of independent.
Okay, well, let's say this one could be an aside. We'll check it later. Okay, the filters instead. A section. Why a section? Okay, but for now, let's say a section, then we will check. These cards on an article, maybe, because they are like a component that repeats, that has like independent auto-content information, and it repeats. So maybe we can think of these cards as an article. And the description, maybe as a section, could work, because it's not as generic as a div, but anyway we give some semantics, so maybe a section. Okay, do we agree with this first diagramming? And okay, so here we have our sketch. Let's try to build the HTML. So the HTML we will call it index.html. Okay, so you tell me which are the elements that should come here. HTML, and which one is the first element? The head. and the body. Do we all agree? Nice. Here we will set the title. Okay, so now let's start with the body structure. So as we already know, in the head you import the elements and the things that are not visible, and in the body you have the things that are visible in the browser, okay? So here we will start with the header. And within the header we might say that we will have like a big header with the name that is imparato. Trying to start or to replicate this one here, okay? Then after here we have the navigation bar. Let's add a class to this one so that we can then, when we will work on the CSS, reference somehow that specific element, okay? So I will call it my class. Then I'm going to create this one, the section for the description. Okay, so please take into account that this description doesn't have any semantic. I mean, the name that I gave to the class, it doesn't have any semantic or it doesn't do anything. It's just an arbitrary name that I gave to that specific section. Why did I choose description? Because by setting description to the name, I know what I'm talking about. I know that the style that I'm applying concerns the section of the website that corresponds to the description, okay? But it doesn't have any semantic. If instead of description, I could have set my description. What's the, not say the rule, but the good practice here? Try to give names that give you a hint of what are you referencing, okay? So if I wrote instead of my description, well, container, it doesn't help me to understand anything. But instead of that, description is something that somehow gives me a hint of what I'm talking about. Then And then here, the only thing that I might be missing is this article, no? Yep.
So it's always a practice to give classes to tags,
To give classes to?
to HTML tags, for example, Napa.
Mm,
We have just one Napa in our website.
okay, but the question is because you could have added an ID instead of a class? Or what do you? No, in this case, I mean, it's a good practice because then we will have to format and to visual format those classes, those elements by using CSS. And the only way we have through CSS to reference that specific element is by using the name of the class or by using the ID. So that's why.
So is it always a good practice or?
Yeah, more than a good practice is something that at the end you will have to do. Okay. For instance, I decided to do it in this moment that I'm defining the components. But if I hadn't done this at the moment, then later when I would want to write the CSS, I would be forced to write them because otherwise I couldn't apply any style to them.
And why do we choose classes instead of IDs?
In this case, let's say that an ID could be valid in this case because each element, there is just one element of each one of these that we have defined so far. So technically, an ID would be valid in this case. You still, I mean, the reason is because later when we will see JavaScript, the IDs are more useful to point within the JavaScript, to point an element to do changes on the HTML structure. So the IDs are typically more used by the JavaScript to do changes in the interaction of the website. And the class is usually more useful to apply the style to the website. Okay? Technically, it's also possible and would be absolutely fine in this case to use the IDs, at least with these elements. Because for instance, with this element, with the article element, the ID would not be fine, no? Because we are expecting to have several articles. So in that case, wouldn't work. But with the ones we have defined so far, would be fine. Okay? Are we fine up to now? Questions? Yep.
Does it make sense to already think about putting all the sections in the main into bigger sections so we can make a grid?
It depends. It depends on which layout are we going to choose. Because maybe with the grid, we are able to make it look as we have here. So if with the grid we are fine, we don't need to group them so far. And then we're missing this article, but for instance, this article, we are expecting to have more of one of these, no? So it won't be just one post, but more than one post. So in that case, it would make sense to create like a container, and within that container, several articles. You know what I mean? So let's use div in this case, and then we check if it is the best option. And here we might think of an article. So here is just to indicate that we are expecting to have more than one article, okay? How does it look? Oh, like this. Because graphically we haven't done anything, so it's pretty basic, and the only elements that we have defined is this h1 with the name of the web application, and the articles with Juan and Luigi. Okay, so up to now, graphically, it doesn't do anything. So let's start to think of the graphical interface. Okay, so what you were asking. So here we have like a first important choice. How do you think we can, first of all, how do we approach this? We start working component by component, or first we think of the general structure and then we dive into each component, into each section of the website? My advice, and what I think is more practical, is first of all, start to think of the whole layout of the general structure, and then when we have the general structure working, then we will go into each element, because each element or each section might have a different distribution or a different layout. So let's start to think of the whole graphical structure, and then we dive into each component. So the whole general structure, how do you think we can represent this? Which one is the layout that could work better with this? Last week we saw that we had the grid layout and we had the flexbox. So the general structure, which one do you think we can use? Grid, right? And then with the grid we can play with the width of each element, and we can play with the placement of each element. So let's start to work with a grid. What do we need to start working with the CSS? Of course, to create the CSS file. What's the second attribute here? I don't remember. Style sheet is the value, and the name? Ah, okay. This one. Okay. Okay. To make sure it works, we can and it works, okay? So we already know that we have the CSS, and the CSS has been integrated into the HTML. Okay, so do you remember how the grid works, the grid container? What do we need to use the grid container? We needed like a outer container, and within, and defining how it will behave like a grid, and then to place the elements within that huge container, okay? So do we need something else in our structure? Yes, we need to define that big container that will hold everything inside of him, okay? So we already have, yeah?
Is it possible to use for the grid directly the body?
No, because it's not possible to add directly like a class to the body. It's not a good practice. it's better to create the container, and within that container to, yep.
Why should we use grid instead of more flex boxes?
We don't have to, it's our choice, but it depends on how do we visualize like the general structure and how do we think we can deal with the general structure. So in this case, for instance, based on the drawing, somehow we can identify that this one could be more easily achieved by using grid. But also with Flexbox, it would be an option.
There isn't area winner.
No, I mean, and this is something super important that, thank you for the question, because you have to get used that here there is like not an unique solution, but you can approach, I mean, the diagram however you want, as soon as you comply with the, I mean, with the original design. So, for instance, if one of you does the whole grid with the Flexbox and it works and it's fine. Or if some of you use instead of that a grid container, it's also fine, okay? So it basically depends on how you want to approach the development.
Isn't the Flexbox a little bit more responsive than grid?
Not necessarily, not necessarily, no, not necessarily, okay? Okay, and anyway, be patient because tomorrow we will see Bootstrap and all of this will make sense, okay? Nice, so right now we have this. How do we make this grid container a grid container? Display grid, right? Do you agree? And then how many columns this grid will have? Let me open this one outside so we can easily. How many columns do you think this might have?
3, and I have a question.
Yeah.
Why the header tags and the footer tags are inside the grid and not out?
Because as I'm thinking of this, they will be within the grid. It is just that they will occupy the whole width, both the header and the footer. Okay, so we will make them to occupy the whole 3 columns, both the header and the footer. So that's why. Okay. So do we all agree that it is 3 columns? How do we know it is 3 columns? Because here we have, when we arrive at this point, okay, when we arrive at this point, we see that we have like 3 main sections. The one covered by this column, the second one that is like the column in the middle, and this one. And in the cases of the header, the navigation bar, and the footer, we don't worry because we can make anyway them to occupy like the whole width, okay? So that will be our approach. Nice, so what's the property through which we can define the columns? This one, I think, and we will say what does this mean? That we want the first column to occupy 1 fraction, the one in the middle 3 fractions, and the one in the right 1 fraction. Okay. how many rows are we going to have? Four? Who else says four? Why one?
First one was the search. The second one contains both description and OCR.
Ah, yeah, but we are thinking on the whole graphical layout. I mean, starting from here.
What are search and then most popular courses and most popular features? Because it's technically Spotify row.
Yeah, but okay. The way I'm looking at this is that this one, the header, might be like the first row, no, because it's the first section there. Then the navigation bar will be also a second row. I mean, we already have like the 3 columns, right? And we all agree that the 3 columns are fine. And then when I'm trying to think of the elements, how do you call that? Vertically, then we have like the first one, that is the header. So I would set a first row for the header. Then a second row would be for the navigation bar, no? So in that case, it would be the second one. Then the third one would be like for the left bar, the central portion of the website, and the right bar. So in that case, that would be, I mean, all of this would be like the third row, okay? And finally, we will have like the footer, that is the last row, this one. Do we agree with this distribution? Okay. Okay, so how I'm setting this, the height of each row, I'm saying that I will give to the header like 2 fractions. The navigation should be thinner, should be smaller, so I give just 1 fraction. Then for the main content, or for the main portion of the website, I will give 5, and then 1 for the footer. Maybe 2 could be also fine. Okay, so up to now, do we agree with this distribution?
Maybe we can add some borders for now.
Yeah, I was thinking on that, so. We have the header. Okay, so I applied some borders but just for showing how the graphical interface is looking right now and how each component is being displayed on the graphical interface. So up to now, it is nothing very fancy. Indeed, it has like each element occupies one cell, no? Do we want each element to occupy just one cell? Not in all of the cases. For instance, we want the header to occupy all of the 3 first columns, okay? So let's try to do that, to start with that. How do we make the first? How do we make the header to occupy the 3 columns? This one, I think, will do the magic. I don't know, I don't remember by memory all of this, so if you... Yeah, it improved, but... Yeah?
Shouldn't it be assign the number 4? Because it ends up 4.
Yeah, sure. Because if 3 was at the beginning of the third one, so if we set 4, it occupies the whole 3, and at the beginning of the fourth one, that doesn't exist because there is the next row. Nice. So this one already works, no? Do we want to add some space between the grid elements so that they don't stay like all of them very sticked? Yeah, so maybe here we can add something like grid. Do you remember gap? This one? Yeah.
It recommends that you just use gap instead of grid gap.
That I used? This one. Okay, okay, nice. Thank you. And let's say, so that we set some space between the elements. Nice. Nice, so I think we have to do the same with the navigation bar, no? We have 2 options here. One option would be to apply exactly the same style that we are applying to the header, because anyway it will behave the same, no? It will occupy also the 3 columns and it will occupy the whole width. So one option would be that one, like, and it will work. What's the problem with this option? That then if I want to apply a different color for the header and a different color for the navigation bar, I can't, because what I write here is common to both elements. So just because of that, we will keep them separated into different selectors. So far, everything good? Does it work for you also? Okay.
Professor, can you go to the index HTML again?
Sure. Okay, so I just added some titles to identify which section belongs to what. So up to now, it is fine, but we have to split between these two sections, no? Oh. So filters, this way, no? So the filters are on the one side, then on the center who we are, that is the description, and then on the right we have the ranking. But, okay, up to now it seems to work, but do we agree that this information that we have here, our tutors, should be within this one? Or below this one? Or to have like two sections, maybe one for the description and below we have like the tutors? So let's try to group. So for instance, in this case, it makes sense to group things within a container, but just because we want to achieve that specific layout, okay? So let's come back to let's say that, okay, we will create a new container here. And then in there, we will have the description in there, and also we will have all of this. Okay, so why is it that so important, the formatting? Because, for instance, here we don't understand anything and we don't understand which element is within the other elements. But if I format, then we can easily see how it's going, no? So what I did was I created this class, this container that I called main content, because it's the content that will be in the middle. And within that content, I added two sections. The first one that goes for the description, that is this one, the section class description. And then I have another container that has the information of the tutors, okay? So what I did was I created this whole section to group two things: who are we, and our tutors. Up to now, is everything clear? Okay. And what are we missing? The footer, no? Because as you have seen here, the footer is just occupying that cell, and we want to occupy like the whole width of the website. So how do we change that? Okay. Okay, so up to now, do we like our basic layout? Do we all agree that this is the best way to achieve the layout? Questions? Does it work for you? Okay. Nice. So what should be the approach at this point? It should be try to zoom in into each component and let's see how the layout of each component will behave. Because the fact that we have chosen the grid layout for the big structure, for the general structure, doesn't mean that all of the elements or all of the components within that grid layout should behave also as a grid layout. No? So for instance, let's take a look at the header. So in the header here we have the imparato, but then on the right we have some links. No? So how can we create this behavior? What do you think? A grid layout would work in this case just for the header? Huh? Maybe a flexbox could be easier in this way. Also a grid layout, maybe thinking of 3 columns, but in that case would be inaccurate because we might give like 1 fraction for the one on the left, 1 fraction for the one on the right, and then try to apply like a big number in the middle so that both of the elements go to the sides. But instead of doing that manually and doing it that way, we already know that flexbox has a property that aligns the elements at the beginning, at the end, and it does everything for us. So in this case, it would be more practical to create a flexbox just for the header, okay? So nice, so let's think how to create the... So do we all agree that it should be in this rule that we try to make the header a flexbox, okay? Is this a property, display flex? Is it? I don't know. Yes, okay. So by saying display flex, I'm saying that the elements within this container that is my header will behave as a flex elements. And in there I have 2 elements. I have this one, and then I will have also the links, no, on the right side. So let's create the links. Okay, so why did I do this? To create like 2 sections on the header. The one having like the logo or the main title, and the other one having like the 2 buttons that we said that we would like to have in this case. That was the sign in and login button, okay? So since header logo and header links are within my header, and I define that my header will behave as a flex, then the elements will automatically be flex items. And then on that flex items, we can apply the properties that we saw last time that the flexbox has for its elements, okay? So let's do, okay, and here we can also set, what's the property that separates them? Justify content and space around. Okay, so in this case, it separates the two elements. Space around or space between? I think it's space between, because a space around, okay. In this case, the space around adds space here and here, do you see? But instead of this, a space between just sets the space in the middle, and both elements are set to the sides. Okay? And let's suppose that here, instead of the H1, I want to add a picture, a logo of our website. So do you know which tag do we use when we want to add images? IMG. What do I have to set here? Which attribute? Which property? The? Okay, since we don't have to memorize all of these, we can go to the website that I told you, the first class, and then we can filter IMG. Okay, so in this case, it has a class, and then the other attribute is the source. That the source is where my image is on the project. I'm pointing to an image mostly the same way as I'm pointing to the CSS to import the CSS. So here I will point to the image I want to add. And in this case, it's super interesting because it doesn't close with another closing tag like all of the elements, but it closes here with like this, okay? In the case of the images, yeah. Yeah, and alt, what is it for?
It's for the screen readers. Basically, if the image doesn't load, you have the alt description that describes the.
Yeah, so I think in this case we can show it because so for instance in this case that the image didn't load because of course the image isn't there, so it can't place the image there. I can set this alt attribute that gives the user a description of what it has there. And it is especially useful for screen readers, but also for visually impaired people that can't see the image. So by adding that description, we can tell them what it contains, okay?
Sorry, but usually it doesn't like show up, right?
No. When I will show that when I will add an image, it will show the image, of course. In this case, it is because it is not being able to upload the image.
Is it also the text that shows up when you hover over the image?
Yep. Yeah. And I've been working on these images, but then you will choose which one do you want as the logo of our website. So I have these options. We have this one, this one, this one, and both. Yeah, these ones. Which one do you like the most? This one? This one do we like? Do we like it? Someone likes this one? Okay, do you like this one? Someone else? This one? Do you like it more? Yeah. Okay, we have to choose between this one and this one. Okay? So, okay, who votes for this one? Raise the hands. Okay. And this one? And a lot of people didn't vote. What? Did you like this one? Well, I don't know. Yeah, we flip a coin. Do you have a coin? I don't have coins. Maybe? Or just the book? No, because no one liked that one the most. So it's better to choose one. And also because we will be seeing this image like for the whole semester. So, do you have a coin? Do you want to flip it? Okay. So, but first, who is the representative for this one? If? Okay. Okay, go. So this one it is. Okay, we'll get this one. Before continue, what's the difference between this one and this one? No, I mean, yeah, graphically it has something, but I wanted to say that the difference is the background, no? In this case, it is white, so if I import this into the website and I don't want the header to be white, it's kind of ugly because it will be like the square, the white square with a different background color. Instead, this one has the transparent background. So if I set the background to black or to whatever other color, it will behave better and it will. Who? You will take this one, yeah. And here I will create a new folder that is called images. Okay, so it is, up to now, it is like this. What happens? It is super big, so we have to restrict it. So, okay, so 200 pixels is fine. Do we like this? Or maybe 100 pixels? So we agree 100 pixels. But what's the problem in here? When I open it on the browser, it's super small. No? So do you remember that was the problem with the absolute and with the relative measures? That with the absolute ones, we don't have a control over how it will look depending on the screen. So if instead of this, we use no, the RAM. Somehow the percentage would kind of work better, but well, it still have some issues. And I just wanted to show, yeah.
Maybe if the logo is so big, the nav should be to the right of the logo.
If the, I'm sorry.
If the logo is so big, maybe the nav should be like to the side of the logo.
If the logo is so big, yeah, maybe in that case, yeah, it could be an option. But it is almost a responsive behavior, no? Because if the logo is so big, it means that the nav, yeah, could be somehow contracted and be integrated within that container. Okay. Okay, but up to now, let's say that we have this. This is our site so far. And it still seems simple, but we did very important things today. No, we were able to identify which was like the most appropriate structure for the whole container, and we were able. And the most important thing before leaving is to. Did you notice that the whole structure has a grid, but the components within that structure can have a completely different layout? So the whole structure is a grid, but the header is a flexbox. Okay. What does it depend on? It depends on how do we want to set the elements graphically within our interface, okay? Questions? So far, so good? Okay, perfect. So we stop here and we see you tomorrow.